Anyways, let's get into some stuff. This is from Jason Box. Elements Rage. This is some video of Haishen. This is from looks like it's from a few days ago. But I just like that phrase, Elements Rage. Oh, this is a crazy video. Has anybody seen this one? So a bunch of people were evacuated from the camp was a creek fire. This man, a bunch of people, about 200 people, you know, with the big trucks and the boats, were out at this lake. And I'm not sure exactly. It's wherever the creek fire was at. And anyways, they were surrounded by fire, and they had to be, you know, like 200 or so people were flown out of this area by the National Guard. But this is crazy video. There's fire on all sides, all around us. Absolutely terrifying video from Mammoth Pools, where 200 plus people were trapped when the creek fire exploded. I'll try and play this.
If we make it out of this, we're at Mammoth Pools. We are completely trapped. There's fire on all sides, all around us. All the roads are burnt. Fire everywhere. Hey, my wolf pack, just wanted to show you. If we make it out of this, we're at Mammoth Pools.
That's crazy video. Crazy video. Very frightening indeed. Just as an aside, can we stop using Wolfpack to describe anything? It's way overused. Anyways. Something else. Yeah. Anyways, let's move on. This is a tweet from Natural Blaze. Insane weather change about to hit the Midwest could devastate crops. And that is a real concern. Look at this. The low temp goes from 68 to 35, 29, 20, and 28. That's this week. That's in a few days. This is for Denver. And, you know, parts north and west are going to be... Here, I'm going to show you this. This is... Look at that. Look at that. The purple is... The light purple is, what, 12 degrees? Yeah, getting into like 12 degrees, 20 degrees. Am I reading this correctly? Or are we going into minuses? Yeah, I feel like I'm not even... Oh, this is anomaly. So the anomaly is, sorry, this is not an actual temperature map. This is a temperature anomaly map. My bad. But the temperature anomaly is negative, in the negative 16 area into, you know, negative 6, 8, 16. So that's the extent of that mass of, we'll call it Arctic air, that's going to float over the U.S. and create most likely very insane conditions. And that is all through the Midwest. So somebody was like, that's just Denver. No, well, if you look at this map, that is right through the Corn Belt, literally right through the Corn Belt. Human Love Solidarity says all farms have to harvest today and looking for volunteers. I'm sure, indeed. I'm sure like right now they're like, we got to get this stuff out of the ground immediately. James Osborne, this is going to be weird for Kansas, indeed. Rotherheim, yeah, I got it. It's not minus 12. Winter snow. It's definitely a lot cooler here in western North Carolina for early September. Boulder of lamppost snowstorm after heat wave doesn't sound so bad. It's not if you're relying on the climate to be somewhat normal in order to conduct, farming operations or whatever else it is you're doing. But yeah, something to keep an eye on for sure. For sure. Oh, let me make a correction, by the way. This article I read yesterday, because my brain wasn't working, the illustrator of this picture, which is a really great picture, was Matty Hune. He did not write the article. The author of the article was Douglas Rushkoff. So I completely messed that up yesterday, and I needed to clarify that. So my apologies to Daniel Rushkoff. Or Douglas Rushkoff. Sorry, got it wrong again. But super cool drawing there by Matty Hune. Renee Michelle says you cannot live in a region where the jet stream is now. It is broken, so the myth that you will not suffer up there versus near the equator is a lie. The wall is to keep you in. Yes, the wall is to keep you in, indeed. Yes, let's blame it on the heat, Scott Andrews. Let's blame it on that. Food might be a little crispy. That's how I like my toasted cheese sandwiches, says Schulte 100. Okay, let's move on to this article. Very interesting article from Jacobin. Somewhat different take, I guess, on the political atmosphere and climate change and Extinction Rebellion. So let's read this. I didn't read the whole thing. I kind of skimmed through it, but looks like it was interesting enough. So this is from Mark Montegriffo. Yes, socialism or extinction is exactly the choice we face. Extinction Rebellion leaders have dismissed the idea that protests for climate action have anything to do with socialist ideology, but refusing to take political positions and to relate green politics to the interests of the social majority will reduce environmentalism to an ineffective moral protest. This week, another round of high-profile Extinction Rebellion protests began in Britain and London. Climate activists intend on a 10-day occupation of Parliament Square as politicians return to vote on the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill, or C. The CEE or CEE. CEE bill will be moved by Carolyn Lucas, MP, the Green Party's sole representative in the House of Commons, the sole representative. It cites two objectives: to ensure that the UK plays its role in limiting global temperatures to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Well, okay. You're already off the rails with that one, but let's play along. And to actively conserve the natural world. The key difference between this bill and other climate emergency motions is that it proposes a citizens' assembly, a consultative group of individuals selected from the general population with the intention of being representative of the wider citizenry. I also, too, have questions about the citizens' assembly. On the surface, it sounds like a good idea, or it sounds like direct democracy, which is what I think that they're trying to go for. Again, in France, they just had a citizens' assembly give all kinds of recommendations on climate change. Like they proposed, you know, like a checklist of things to do, and it was very, very timid. Very timid. It wasn't really anything. It was less controversial than even the IPCC report. And so I was like, well, what good is this citizens assembly thing if everybody's just like, well, let's just be really nice to the earth. You know what? You know what I'm saying? Let's, you know, like that's kind of what it came down to. Let's just stop this burning of the fossil fuels real soon, you know? Like it just was like that. And so is the citizens assembly really got any teeth? Anyways, let's go farther. The bill warns of a yellow vest effect, alluding to a similar initiative in France. There, however, President Emmanuel Macron has accepted just 3 out of the 149 recommendations from a citizens' commission following the Gilets jaunes protests. Well, that was the thing I'm alluding to had nothing to do with the yellow vest. Or it wasn't the same as the yellow vest requests, if you will. Although such deliberative democracy has been praised in Ireland, for example, paving the way for its reproductive rights referendum, it contains an assumption that solutions can be found inside the context of our current neoliberal capitalism, so long as the discussion was participatory enough. For this reason, XR proposes sortition, selecting citizens by lot, as an alternative to voting. Doubtless, it is a nice gesture to have citizens discuss ideas for a just transition. But any serious radical proposal on climate change must recognize that the capitalist system requires extraction, commodification, and ultimately ecological destruction. And thus, any effective response to this crisis demands a confrontation with capitalist interests. I'm going to give that a ding, ding, ding. The absence of these dynamics is where the bill falls short, and so, to Extinction Rebellion's own political proposals. As Natasha Josette from Labor for a Green New Deal wrote last year, what the movement is missing or not stating clearly enough is that the climate crisis is the result of neoliberal capitalism. Again, another ding, and a global system of extraction, dispossession, and oppression. Without this, Extinction Rebellion is more of an organization seeking to make a splash in the media than a movement as such. The passing of the bill would fulfill XR's third and final demand, which calls for a citizens' assembly. I mean, do you think they're actually going to pass? Well, maybe they will. I don't know. A citizens' assembly with the task of mapping out a road to climate and ecological justice. The demand implores us to go beyond politics, but it is unclear. Oh, hold on. It is unclear. Oh, I lost everything. About what concretely is meant to replace it. That is really important. That's really important. I'm going to pause here and just say, like, this is something that I've been doing on this channel for, over 2 years now. Every single time, every single proposal far and wide seems to be like, we got to stop burning fossil fuels. Even Sam Carana's climate plan on Arctic News is just so like, we need an immediate carbon tax and we got to stop. It's just, what are you actually replacing things with? What's the actual road forward? Nobody really has ever, and even Extinction Rebellion doesn't do this. Nobody's saying this is what must be done if we are going to fight climate change, right? Because just stopping emissions is not going to reverse climate change. Just stopping emissions or just lowering emissions or just, all of the things in the absence of an actual plan, in the absence of actual concrete, a factual reckoning with what is going to happen and what is going to be necessary in order to counteract what's happening. Or what's actually going to be necessary, lifestyles that are actually going to need to be led, that are going to produce a not only net zero, but maybe even zero negative life, transition in order to combat climate change. Like, nobody will spell that out. Nobody will spell that out. If if I'm wrong, please correct me. If somebody else, there is, well, maybe I'm wrong on some level. So, yes, drawdown. There are some people talking about drawdown or degrowth ideas. Even those seem really tepid to me. Again, I forget the guy's name, Paul Dawkins, who wrote the drawdown book. If we only do if we change something by 4%. Every year for the next 10 years, and we can draw down, like, it's just these little tiny tepid incremental, knob turning tweakies that, like, if people are like, that sounds like a good idea, wow, we could certainly do that. Like, nobody's really talking about transformative radical change. Nobody. Even Extinction Rebellion is not talking about radical transformative change or what that change would actually look like. It has to look like something. I don't trust, I'm sorry, I just do not trust human beings to go like, well, we've got to do away with this, and then we're open to ideas. Whatever we come up with will be great. No, it won't be great. Because probably what's going to take the place of that in that vacuum of ideas about what it actually needs to look like is going to be something that's going to be more ecological destruction, or Green New Dealisms, or renewable energyisms, or tech fixes, or you're going to leave this vacuum open for humans to continue just doing what they're doing, which is just coming up with dumb ideas, or not very good ideas, or very, very weak ideas, or tepid ideas. So you really need to come up with, like, this is what it needs to look like, and we need to go there right now, today, tomorrow. But anyways, for all of that being said, I still enjoy what XR is doing. They're the most radical of, in the land of anybody really doing anything out there. Unless, if I'm wrong, again, please correct me. I'm sure there are individuals out there that are being more radical, and maybe some small groups that are out there being more radical, but they're not really trying to be all that vocal about it for good reason. Lightning Rod says, I believe that the course of action is to allow climate change to cure climate change. And, there are plenty that see that as the way forward. That's just the thing that's frustrating to me, is that nobody has really mapped this out. Like, it's everybody who just wants to really give up responsibility for mapping it out. What does it look like? I like Walter Jane and his proposals for, like, re-greening, or creating, like, very green areas that will draw down temperature and draw down CO2. Like, that looks like, something substantial. That looks like an actual action plan that doesn't involve more technology or more, whatever. It looks like that's something that looks like more Earth-centric and less human-centric. But maybe I'm even wrong about that. But I'm just saying, like, nobody's really walking down the road, even as a thought experiment. Like, well, what would it look like? What would we have to do? What would we actually be doing if we went to, like, net zero by 2025? What would that look like? Nobody's willing to walk down that road. Please, for God's sake. Maybe we need to form another. I mean, we have a community here, but maybe we need to form some kind of space or place where we can make proposals and really, have, like, a radical climate change action community. And this is what it looks like, right? James Osborne. I see there's a lot of nihilism going on today. That's okay. That's okay. Keith Hayes, somebody suggested not buying gas on Fridays to get in the right mindset. Well, there you go. Was that very helpful? No, but it was just, again, it was like more of a thought experiment. Wormany says, this is a good comment. Thank you, Wormany. Even people with these online communities like yours or Environmental Coffee House are doing that. Some of us have approached them. All of them are too busy. You're right. You're right. Boiled rope lamppost. Every citizen needs to testify publicly on video. Clayton Halligan, I'm only 60% nihilistic. Low, mid to mid-high nihilism today. G. Demarest is BBN entertainment for the end times. On some levels, that, sure. Of course, that's what it is. But I don't know about entertainment. I think this is a congregation of people who are like-minded people who want to engage with each other, and it's very hard to engage with the rest of the world about this, right? Anyways, let me go back to this article because it's interesting. It brings up some interesting discussion points. Against politics? ? Historically, movements in the liberal tradition that have attempted to be broad and popularist, to borrow the language of XR's founder Roger Hallam, often find themselves politically unmoored when the initial shine wears off. Hold on one second. Oh, I messed everything up. Anyways. Okay, sorry about all the weirdness. Often finds themselves politically unmoored when the initial shine wears off. Movements that operate on an all things to all people basis are at the threat of dissolving upon contact with reality. Evading questions of their class and social interests and representation thereof strips a movement of its political content. You cannot expect to be politically relevant for very long if being politically ambiguous or apolitical is a fundamental component of a movement. In their recent communications, explicitly dismissing the notion that the movement is socialist, Extinction Rebellion are again committing themselves to this fate. Just to be clear, we are not a socialist movement. We do not trust any single ideology. We trust the people, chosen by sortition like jury service to find the best future for us all through a citizens' assembly. A banner saying socialism or extinction does not represent us. That's from Extinction Rebellion UK, September 1, 2020. Activists that do not define their political analysis as originating from socialist thought perhaps should not be surprised by the group's repudiation of the socialism or extinction banners during its protests. When a movement says it is not a socialist movement, it does more than insult the activists within it who are socialists. It strips it of serious radical and political content and hints at its lack of interest in gaining a working class majority to its side. This indeed is a constituency the group did much to alienate in its recent past. In an action at a London tube station, Extinction Rebellion activists climbed to the roof of the train, keeping commuters from accessing the relatively environmentally friendly public transport. A physical confrontation broke out and was caught on the group's social media live stream. Extinction Rebellion issued an apology for the action and the disruption to commuters. Well, that's good. If they felt an apology was necessary, then that's good. It further fueled perceptions of the group as white, middle class, and out of touch with working class people. A recent Center for the Understanding of Sustainable Prosperity study, a study on the class composition of Extinction Rebellion rebels, lends weight to this perception. In Tribune's Political Theory Other podcast interview from last year, Hallam identifies Extinction Rebellion as fitting into a gap between the radical left and the NGO left, dismissing the former as Calvinistic and the latter as corporatist. This explanation is not only reductive and simplistic, but it also places the group in the same political no man's land that has hamstrung populist movements from Podemos in Spain to Five Star in Italy. In the interview, Hallam further expanded on this claim to stand against politics per se. My main orientation isn't really political, it is more sociological and structural. That's the starting point. It's simply impossible for the main social institutions of a society to be able to adapt quickly to rapid change. Particularly, the Labor Party isn't going to cope. What we're looking at is a complete collapse in the credibility of the political class. The political class is heading for extinction in terms of credibility. There's no conception of a mass extinction event. Extinction Rebellion is mainly morally mobilized. There's potentially some ideological components to be teased out from Hallam's thoughts, albeit fairly broad ones. There is a recognition of the limits of electoralism from a populist perspective, as well as an acknowledgement of the need to keep up a grassroots movement with climate breakdown on the horizon. It is telling, though, that Hallam is dismissive of political intervention and goes as far as saying that the mobilizing force of the movement is primarily out of a sense of morality. For Hallam, politics is not about the relations of power and material conditions, but rather a colloquial understanding of the word that denotes unpleasantness and dirtiness. And also, I'm going to add, ignores the fact that all of life is political. All relationships are political, right? Politics are in every facet of life, not just the government. While unpleasant and dirty it may be, political and ideological clarity that places anti-capitalism and anti-racism at its center will give the movement the maturity it lacks. And it helps it connect to those constituencies that it has tended to alienate. To borrow a line attributed to Chico Mendes, environmentalism without class struggle is just gardening. Extinction Rebellion without socialism is just mass arrests. For clarity, but this also leaves XR to open to other dangerous influences. I was myself one of the admins behind Extinction Rebellion's social media presence and saw instances where activists or individuals posing as activists have disseminated eco-fascist propaganda. Here we go. On occasion, we would receive messages asking whether this was official Extinction Rebellion material. Having to clarify that your group is not in favor of population control laws is probably an indication that the politics of the movement is not as clear as it could be. Okay, well, that's a discussion for another day. The process of ideological and political clarity can develop over time for a movement, though internal and external forces, internally by methods of discussion and self-critique, externally through contact with other forces and groups in society. This journey to clarity can be better understood if we imagine movements as having life cycles. Extinction Rebellion is young in age, not just in terms of many of its activists, but also insofar as being a movement yet to reach maturity. It has a relatively global reach and identifies part of its existential destruction, which makes it relevant to its supporters. It would be unfair to expect a movement with broad and populist ambitions to be born into a set of ideologically potent and coherent dogma. To reuse the comparison with Podemos and Five Star, some ideological openness is essential at the start in terms of bringing people on board. Having an activist milieu mobilized on moral grounds is not itself a bad thing, but is certainly not enough in the long term. While that initial ideological openness is arguably necessary, clarity must be an eventual goal. The analytic framework for arriving at the clarity must accept that the existence of classes and social groups where politically meaningful alliances can and must be made between them, and where interests are diametrically opposed to each other. From there, discussions about dealing with those class and social conflicts at a strategic level can fit in, such as the principle of nonviolence and the tactic of mass arrests. For example, Hallam stressed in the Politics Theory Other interview that the treatment of protesters by the police is far worse in other countries than the UK. Even if this were true, this hardly makes the police potential allies. XR's call call for nonviolent, compassionate attitude towards the police shows that there is a shortcoming in the understanding of the police, not only as the physical arm of the bourgeois state that has so far prevented climate justice, but also as institutionally racist. It should not even be needed, but these times are as good as any to revisit its ideological framework in the light of the Black Lives Matter movement and Extinction Rebellion's relationship with working people of color. For ecological politics, it isn't just about raising awareness and thus exerting moral pressure. The giants of corporate capitalism have known of the extent of the climate crisis for years. We can already see that making the ruling class more aware of this crisis and even the human suffering it has and will cause has a decidedly limited effect. The core assumption that the dominant can be reasoned with or convinced, be it by protests like the one this week or awareness campaigns, has no grounding in experience. That is a fairly good point. That is a fairly good point, because what happens is the political class takes on the message, maybe even rebrands the message, right? Or regurgitates the message like Black Lives Matter, and then continues to do the same things that they've been doing regardless, right? So, you know, maybe they can be reasoned with on the level of, oh yeah, totally, I get it. Yeah, it's a real problem. Oh yeah, we're going to get on that, right? Similarly, trusting a randomly selected group of individuals to take action through a citizens' assembly, should the CEE bill pass, seems distinctly insufficient, and it is. It's already been proven to be very insufficient in France. Just as the socialism or barbarism phrase could be updated to socialism or extinction, so too should a nascent movement move from childhood to maturity. This begins with having a clear sense of political conflict, recognizing the need to find allies for a common struggle. I hope you guys enjoyed that article. I thought it was an interesting, you know, some interesting arguments in there. I'm sure some of y'all disagree or agree. Hey guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel. The links below, PayPal, Patreon, Square. Also, if you'd like to watch the live streams, you can watch the live streams on my Patreon channel. You can subscribe for as little as $1. So hopefully I will see you over there, and thanks so much.